So I watched Encanto, and it was painfully average. I had heard a lot of people say really good things about this movie, and I checked it out, and honestly, I just don't see that at all. I really did not feel anything watching this, and I was so bored at points that I was thinking about turning it off. I'm not trying to say that the movie's, bad or anything, because it's really not. It's just that, there's nothing about this movie that, sticks with me, or that I particularly enjoyed. It was a very passive experience watching it, honestly. I really think this has to do with the characters in the movie, because most of them fall pretty flat. Pretty much everyone in this movie besides Mirabel can be summed up as, oh, they have this power. Oh, they can transform into something. Oh, they're super strong. And they don't really get a lot of development outside of that, which makes it extremely hard to actually care about them, and even harder to get invested in the plot about the house falling apart or whatever. I really feel like this story would probably be much better suited to a mini-series type format, like Over the Garden Wall, where the story and characters actually have time to breathe instead of kind of being rushed through and squeezed in like they are now. Because the whole message of the movie is about how you're more than your gift and there's more to you than just what you're good at. But I don't feel like there is anything more to a lot of these characters, because I don't really know them very well. If I had gotten to know each of them and really feel for them, I really feel like I would have enjoyed this movie significantly more. But it's really hard to do that when the movie is extremely short. I think it's less than 2 hours long. Not saying I really wanted it to be a super long movie, but you easily could have used some extra runtime to maybe flesh out these people more. That being said, I did like Mirabel a lot. I thought her struggle with not having powers was somewhat compelling. My favorite character by far was definitely Bruno. I don't even really know why, but he's the only one who actually feels like a real person. Whenever he is on screen, the movie is genuinely okay, but he isn't in it for a lot, sadly. The songs in this movie are written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. I don't know if I would ever say I've loved anything he's ever written, but he is an interesting composer. The songs in this movie aren't really bad or anything, but they don't stand out to me too much. The only ones I can really remember are the opening song and the song about Bruno, mainly because the Bruno song has been stuck in my head ever since I watched this movie, and I physically cannot get it out no matter how hard I try. I'm not trying to say the other songs are terrible, but they don't really stick out to me as much, at least after a first watch. The animation is obviously fantastic because it's a Disney movie, but at this point that's kind of just expected. Overall, Encanto is just kind of eh. I don't really hate anything about it, but at the same time, I'm not crazy about it either. It honestly just kind of feels like a first draft that they turned into a movie, which is disappointing because I really like the message of the movie, and I feel like if they had done it a little better, it probably would have really resonated with me. So I'm gonna give Encanto a thumb sideways. It's not bad, it's not great. I also watched Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and sadly, it was very bad. I was looking forward to this film when I first heard it announced, and I really wanted to like it, but sadly, it's just not good. It really feels like no passion or effort was put into this whatsoever. More often than not, it feels like they went out of their way to make everything less special than it was in the books and movies. Pretty much every character is reduced down to a shell of their usual selves. The original movies aren't masterpieces, but something they are exceptional at is making every single character distinct and entertaining. But here, everyone is just your typical archetype. You have the Roger just becomes the mean older brother archetype. Rowley is just the typical best friend archetype. The worst one of all is Greg. He is just completely robbed of any sort of memorable character, and he's just turned into this typical kid, which is something that he never was in any of the past movies or books. The whole series is based on him being a complete psychotic narcissist, but here he just isn't. That really takes away from so much of the comedy of the story. The story should be moved forward by Greg's actions and what he gets himself into, but in this movie, everything just kind of happens to Greg, and it's so much less engaging. Pretty much everything involving the story in this movie is an absolute train wreck. For whatever reason, they thought it would be a good idea to make this movie like less than an hour long, so the pacing is abysmal. There's not really a natural progression of anything. There's just events that happen, and then the movie ends. My theory is that they made the movie really short so that the animation would look better, but it doesn't at all. This movie is really, really, really ugly. I'm sorry, they tried their best, but these character models do not work in 3D at all. They look both too simplistic and too stiff, and it gives this movie this really slow, bloated feel to it that does not help it at all. Somehow it's genuinely less expressive than the live-action movie, which I didn't even think was possible. Overall, I thought the acting in this movie was fairly serviceable. Nobody really stood out, but I don't really blame the actors for that. Obviously, it would be really hard to outdo the cast of the original trilogy, but I think they did a fairly good job here. Well, this movie just really sucks. I have like nothing nice to say about it at all. Which is a shame, because I like the Diary of a Wimpy Kid franchise, actually. I very recently actually, went back and reread some of the first book, and I was pleasantly surprised at how much I still enjoyed it. Jeff Kinney clearly puts a lot of passion into the writing of those books, but none of that passion can be felt here. It genuinely feels like a cash grab, which is kind of weird because like Diary of a Wimpy Kid is not that profitable, but this movie like really gave me the same vibes as like the first Percy Jackson movie, where everything is just made bland and bleh. It's so infuriating too, because I can so easily imagine a good animated Diary of a Wimpy Kid reboot, but it just feels like they get so much wrong here. They're doing a Roderick Rules one next year, which I'm hoping is better, because I really do not enjoy being cynical, but I don't know. Roderick is like barely in this one too. He has like one scene with Greg, and he wears AirPods. Overall, I'm giving this movie a thumbs down. I really wish I had more to say about it, but there's honestly not a lot to it. I would recommend just watching the original movie. I have not watched it in a while, so I have no idea how well it holds up, but it has to be better than this. Or just read the books again. They actually hold up fairly well.